Ever since I began this Beat Diabetes channel, people have been asking me about resistant starch. At first, I guess you could say I was a little resistant to looking into resistant starch, mainly because this deals with foods that I hardly eat anyway, such as rice and potatoes. But I've been asked so often that finally I decided to settle the matter and do a test for myself and see if there's anything to this concept of resistant starch. The idea behind the resistant starch concept is that you can heat a starchy food such as rice or potatoes, put it in the fridge to cool for about a day, bring it out and eat it, and your blood sugar rise and spike will be significantly lessened. We're told that the food still has starch, but some of its starch has turned into resistant starch. It doesn't convert into sugar the way it would have had you eaten it after you first cooked it when it was piping hot. Some say that you should eat this second-day food cold. Others say that you can warm it up a bit. In an article by Chris Kissel, he writes, "If you love carbohydrates, science is giving you a great reason to eat foods such as legumes, whole wheat pasta, and bananas. It all boils down to the resistant starch found in these foods and others. Resistant starch got its name because it is resistant to digestion. As a result, this type of starch bypasses the small intestine, where most food is digested, and moves into the large intestine where it ferments. Healthy bacteria living in the colon use the starch as a source of food." Resistant starch has been associated with promoting good health in people, including improved gut health, lower blood sugar following a meal, reduction of appetite, and anti-inflammatory activity in the body. One recent study of mice even found a link between consumption of resistant starch and a reduced incidence of colon cancer. In addition, such foods have a lower glycemic index. This means they trigger a smaller rise in blood glucose than other starchy foods. For that reason, resistant starch may be particularly good for people with diabetes. And on Dr. Stephen Masley's website, he writes, "Potatoes have a high sugar load. This is true if we look at the glycemic index and the glycemic load, which is a far more practical measure, which is the amount of sugar in your bloodstream from eating one serving of food. When you chill a cooked potato, the structure of some of the starch is changed. It does increase the resistant starch content by 55%. So if you're going to eat a potato, it makes sense to chill it after cooking, then reheat it or eat it cold. Studies have shown that the glycemic index in chilled potatoes is about 25 to 35% less than in freshly cooked potatoes that are still warm." So the idea behind resistant starch seems reasonable, but clearly it's not a panacea. You're not going to turn a potato into an avocado in terms of blood sugar spike just by cooling it in the fridge and eating it the next day. At any rate, I have here one cool sweet potato. I baked it yesterday and it has been sitting in the fridge until a few minutes ago. It was a little bit larger than the other two, so I sliced a little bit of it off to make the test equal. Even though some people suggest that you can warm these up a bit, I'm going to eat it cold just to try to get as much of a resistant starch effect as I can. And we'll see how it compares with the heated sweet potato test I did on last week's video. The idea of eating a cold potato doesn't seem appealing to me, but for the sake of research, I'll give it a try. I'll do 4 tests, as with the previous potato tests, and get back to you with the results. Okay, I'm finally done with potatoes, at least until the next experiment. Today I ate a sweet potato that had been baked yesterday and then chilled in the refrigerator until I took it out to eat it. The idea was that when you chill certain starches, you get a resistant starch effect and a significant lessening of blood sugar rise. After eating my resistant starch potato and then giving myself 4 post-meal tests, all I can say is I am less than impressed. I guess you could say that I'm underwhelmed. When I eat and test a food or a meal, what I'm most concerned about are my blood sugar peaks. Just how far did this particular food drive my blood sugar before it started back on its way down? Last week, I ate 2 similarly sized sweet potatoes, one by itself and the other with butter, bacon drippings, and bacon. The potato eaten by itself gave the highest peak, which was a 201 at the 1-hour post-meal mark. The potato eaten with the butter and bacon peaked at 187, which was definitely lower, but not that much lower. Today, with all the hype about resistant starch, I thought I'd see a significant improvement. But my blood sugar peaked at the 1-hour mark at 191. Ouch! Only 10 points lower than when I ate the potato by itself just out of the microwave. As I mentioned, I'm not very impressed. To give you all the scores, I started at the 30-minute post-meal mark with a 133. By 1 hour, I peaked at 191. By 1.5 hours, I dropped to 165. And by 2 hours, I was at 130, which strangely was a higher number than I had when I ate the potato by itself just out of the oven. In my opinion, diabetics who are attempting to keep their blood sugar in line by eating resistant starches are just kidding themselves. They seem like they're grasping at straws, desperately attempting to hold on to their precious potatoes. My advice would be, let them go, give them up, get a divorce from Mr. or Mrs. Potato. It's not worth it, and having blood sugar peaks at 191 rather than 201 is not really doing yourself much of a favor. In some ways, it reminds me of a man who's been beating himself on the head with a hammer. After much pain and terrible bruises, he finally gets the bright idea to put on a baseball cap, and then he continues to beat himself on the head with his hammer, while he boasts to others, "It doesn't hurt quite so much this way." Then he goes on YouTube and makes videos where he advises all the people who beat their heads with hammers to put on baseball caps. Silly man, why don't you just stop beating your head with your hammer instead? And so it is with nasty, blood sugar spiking, high glycemic starches like potatoes and rice. Instead of eating cold potatoes, thinking you're doing yourself a great favor, do yourself a much bigger favor and trade in your potato for an avocado and your rice for a salad or a big bowl of green beans. Well, there you have it. In my mind, all this talk about resistant starches, at least when it comes to sweet potatoes, is much ado about nothing, or at least very little. Okay, maybe I was a little harsh there. To be fair, I have heard from some folks in the comments who say they've achieved some good results using various starchy foods and the concept of resistant starch. So I guess in some situations with some foods and some people it can work. But in this situation with me and sweet potatoes, it failed miserably. If you're really wanting to be able to eat potatoes or other starchy vegetables, give it a try. Test yourself. This channel is not about me doing various tests and saying, now this applies to every diabetic everywhere. Hopefully I'm inspiring you to test yourself and start allowing your own glucose meter to guide and direct you into a diet that works for you as you work with your doctor. Okay, that's it for now. If you appreciated the video, give it a thumbs up so YouTube will recognize its value and rank it higher in their search engine so that more people will be able to see it. And consider subscribing to this channel and then clicking on the bell icon. That way you'll be notified every time we post a new video. God bless. See you again soon.